Gentlemen, start your engines! All right, good morning, everyone. It was an exciting and enjoyable evening last night. No one got hurt, I don't think. We had some amazing cocktails to share amongst us, but the friendships were what it was all about for me, and getting to know many of you more deeply and better understand your business. So I really, once again, appreciate the time that you've been spending with us here last night and again today, and looking forward to a very good day ahead of us as we jump into the outcome economy. To just put things in perspective, no, I am not Don Draper. Don't have the looks or my ability to speak as well as him. But as the son of a former Madison Avenue advertising executive, I can completely relate to this show, and had very, very memorable moments for me as I grew up in my childhood, kind of living this experience. But as I know that while I'm no Don Draper, I'm certainly no Simon Sinek. That's a hard act to follow as of yesterday as far as a great speaker. And I certainly know this room doesn't need me to tell them what to do. But you're stuck with me this morning, and I'm going to try to bring some provocative ideas to the floor here today to get us thinking about how the world around us is changing and how others have already changed and really laid the path in front of us that we can actually follow. Because sometimes it's hard to be a leader, right? Even in racing, people don't always take the lead, they draft, right? So it's our opportunity as an industry to actually get behind some of the leaders, draft, and then find our moment to take off. Before I jump into those provocative examples, I'd like to just look back to look forward. 2016 was really an exciting year for us at ServiceSource because of the deepening relationships we created with each of you. And that is really what our focus has been all about. As a global company that's focused exclusively on powering the world's revenue relationships, as Ryan said just a moment ago, we wake up each and every day looking forward to how we figure out how we can retain and grow and upsell and cross revenue on behalf of each one of your companies. And to do that in 2016, we've made a number of investments. So we opened in new markets in Sofia, Bulgaria, so that we could expand our multilingual capabilities in Europe. It gave us access to additional languages and new talent for the European market. We opened in Manila in the Philippines in February of this year, once again, to get to a point where we could follow the sun type of strategy and provide services around revenue-generating activities 7x24. It also gave us access to a whole new set of talent and people in that market. We've been doing additional investments as well, as I've mentioned to some of you in our sidebar conversations. We invested heavily in learning and development, and will continue to do so for 2017. Why? We want to make sure that as we rev up for the outcome economy, our employees have the greatest opportunity once they come and join us to get prepared and get to a point where their speed to competency is increased, right? When we get on the phones for you, when we're talking to your customers on your behalf, we want to be in a position where we can help close that deal. And these days, more and more, as we know, in the world of customer success and that journey, it's not just about closing the renewal. It's about onboarding clients. It's about getting them to adopt your products and services. It's about looking for those moments where we can make stickier relationships through cross-selling and upselling, just as much as it is about renewing and extending the relationship. So learning and development has been a big investment this year, and you'll see a lot of changes from ServiceSource next year as we roll more of that out to each and every one of our relationships. Additionally, how many people in the room had the chance to go see Steve Walden's business analytics or insight? Maybe some. There we go. A few. I think we had about 30 people in the room. It was another major investment for us, and one we really needed to live up to. ServiceSource has talked a lot about the ability to cohort information and share it back to each of you so you can better understand your own business, how it compares to others in the industry. Not specifically by name, of course, because that's anonymous, but the ability to judge and measure yourself just like a good race car driver does. And in this summer, we finished the building of our enterprise data warehouse system. And we're now just starting in Q3. We've been cutting and slicing and dicing data for different looks. It's giving us a fantastic view into our performance of our own teams of how we're driving revenue for each of you. So now Brian Delaney, who you'll hear from later, can actually look around the world and see the performance of not only a given team within a given revenue delivery center, but he can actually look all the way down to the end customer success manager to see how they're performing. And in the spirit of Simon Sinek, we have not taken that approach to do it with a stick, right? It's not about, it's been 3 quarters that you haven't hit your number. It's about seeing the first quarter in which our customer success managers maybe missed a number so that we can direct managerial attention and other learning and development resources to their assistance to help them develop as a person. It also allows us to capture the best practices from people performing on the phones for us. So if somebody's having a really great success at cross-selling or upselling a particular product or service, we can capture that in a moment. We can send that over to our L&D group within a day. They can churn out a video or a piece of learning content and put that back onto the floor the next day. And in this world where, once again, we're moving more from a process renewal to a product sale, that becomes really important. So the investments continue, and we look to take these investments along with our global experience. In the past 12 months, ServiceSource has represented, on behalf of this room and our other clients who aren't in the room this morning, more than $8 billion of renewed or new growing revenue through cross-sells and upsells. Today, we're speaking more than 40 different languages, calling into 170 different countries around the world. And we believe that by taking those investments we're making and these experiences, that we're well positioned for next year to be an even better partner for each of you. What I'm really pleased to say about 216, and then we'll jump into 217 and the outcome economy more, is really the fact that you're partnered with somebody who's once again healthy, vibrant, and growing. 2016 has been a really good year for us in the fact that we returned to growth as a company ourselves. And so we're very proud of that. We're very excited. In Q2, we grew by just a little bit year over year. We just reported Q3 earnings. We grew 5% this year over last year. And while I can't comment on the projections from the street and the analysts, they have us growing about 7.5% in Q4 and double digits next year. What I can say is we have hit our financial metrics for the street for 7 quarters in a row now, and so I feel pretty good about their projections for our growth. But at the end of the day, our growth is predicated on the success that we deliver to each and every one of you. And I'm pleased to say not only did we grow as a company, but in this 3rd quarter alone, our bookings, so the opportunity in which you gave us and the bookings that we sold on your behalf, actually grew by a little over 3% as well. And so as long as we can see what we do for you growing, then we're pleased to grow as well. We really like to look at ourselves more as that Costco than that GE example, right? We're investing for the long haul, and we want to grow with the benefit of each and every one of you. But as you also know, if you've heard from me or any of our leadership that's in the room today, we committed ourselves over 18 months ago to the concept of customer centricity. It's an easy word to say or phrase to say, and it's easy to talk about, but the real true test of customer centricity is within each and every meeting that we have at ServiceSource when we're talking about one of you. When we decide to make an investment, we've been doing this for 18 months now, we specifically talk about what the direct impact and contribution it will be to your business, not to ours. And I think that has been the real difference over the last 18 months of how we have changed ourselves to become better aligned with each of you. Are we perfect? By no means at all. But that doesn't mean we're not striving for perfection. And we've come a long way. A year ago, as you know, we talk a lot about CPTs, client performance targets. Those are the individual metrics that we set with each of you to make sure we're aligned to get to a common outcome. By the way, as a reminder, if we're not aligned, make sure we get aligned. Those metrics aren't set for our benefit, they're set for yours. And so with your account management team, each and every quarter, we try to look at those with you. A year ago, we were hitting less than 60% of our CPTs, and I can just tell you that is unacceptable. But I'm pleased to say this past quarter, we hit 82%, and we're on the uptick. And like I said, I don't know that we're in an industry or a business that will ever be 100%, and yet we know that every metric we're chasing for each of you is mission critical. This is not about cost savings. It is about being efficient, but it is about driving revenue. And I knew when I accepted this job 2 years ago, revenue is one of the 5 main agenda items on every CEO's board of directors. I just got done with my board meeting last week, and I can guarantee you we spent about an hour talking about revenue and revenue-related growth. Now, the cool thing for me is I get to talk about it in the spirit of the 75-plus global relationships we have around the room. But for sure, we understand that each of you are speaking with your CEOs about hitting and exceeding the numbers you're given each and every quarter. As I mentioned, we're investing in our future to the benefit of your future, and we look forward to being a partner next year. But let's change gears now and talk about the outcome economy specifically. And there's the old racing advantage that to finish first, you must finish. But however, we all know to even finish, you must get started. And so with that, let's go talk about the outcome economy. This track may look familiar from Derek's conversation last night. This is the Le Mans 2024 race. And that race in particular really reminds me of the roles that each and every one of us play in our company. We have to remember we're not running a sprint. And what Le Mans race reminds us, it is a race of endurance and of efficiency. Not only of the driver, but of the car and the machine around them. And as we're entering in this economy that's changed for one that just makes stuff and sells stuff, to a world that we thought we were really getting good at about digitizing assets and delivering them in a different manner, to a world where we're starting to simplify and really consumerize technology to the benefit of businesses, where they can easily transact in the cloud now and through a subscription-based economy, make decisions on the fly, and truly pay on a basis of consumption. And if you haven't moved there yet, you will be moving there soon, right? Because at the end of the day, clients want to buy an outcome. They're less and less interested in the days of 20 years ago where they bought your product or service and the burden was on them to make it successful. In a world where relationships are no longer 4 years, but they're 3 months or 12 months, the burden becomes on all of us to ensure they are successful. And so the world has changed to this outcome economy and one that is success-focused by our end customer's definition. A renowned Harvard Business School professor, Theodore Levitt, popularized a concept about 20 years ago that customers didn't really want to buy a quarter-inch drill bit. What they wanted to buy was the whole. And I would say 20 years later, that actually didn't go far enough. Because today, your customers really don't care about your drill bit, and they really don't care about the hole. But what they care about is what the hole enables, because that's the outcome. Think about it. When I go to Home Depot to buy the drill bit, that wasn't my exciting thing for the day. When I drilled the hole, had I even drilled it correctly, that wasn't the exciting thing. It was the picture I was able to hang. That was the outcome. And that is directly applicable to each and every one of your companies and what you're selling to your clients. So holes don't really matter. The concept of delivering an outcome-centric environment isn't all that new, though. I mean, we act as if it's the biggest revelation ever, and yet there are market leaders that have been leading the way for years, if not, in fact, even a couple of decades. And you'll be quite surprised to see some of these legacy companies that we can really be drafting behind and moving to take the lead on. So who would have thought that Rolls-Royce, Caterpillar, and John Deere, 3 old industry, old economy companies, were actually the leaders in the outcome economy? How could they be the leaders? We're the tech industry. These are old big-time manufacturers. But in fact, if we look at each one of them, they're a phenomenal story. Rolls-Royce in 1906 was formed together and created quickly a reputation for building luxury automobiles. I didn't even know that. But they established themselves there, and then the world changed and went upside down in 1914 with World War I, and quickly they moved their production into aircraft engines. Now, 100 years later, Rolls-Royce owns over 50% of the wide-body aircraft engine market. But what really changed their game was what they introduced in 1962. Not 2012, not with the cloud economy, but in 1962, they introduced the concept of power by the hour. What they had realized already was the fact that their customers, the airlines, really weren't happy about buying a jet engine. They were extraordinarily unhappy about when that jet engine wasn't working and the plane was grounded. So what Rolls-Royce figured out, once again, 50 years ago, is that they had to align with the same successful customer outcome that their customers were looking for. And that was planes flying full of people that were generating revenue. And so in '62, they introduced this concept of power by the hour, where they were paid not on the sale of a big capital expenditure of a jet engine, but they were paid on flying hours. And so they took all of their costs, and in fact, by 1997, introduced a maintenance program and extended that in 2002 to whereby all of the expenses of running that jet engine were paid through their Power by the Hour program. Today, in 2016, for Rolls-Royce, over 50% of the aerospace's revenue for the year is generated through this program, and more than 70% of the profit. This is an outcome-centric model that was started in 1962. They didn't need, the internet or the cloud economy to get them there. They realized they were unaligned with their customers and wanted to find success. In 1886, Benjamin Holt started a company in Stockton, California, and began the production of combine harvesters. Interestingly, 91 years later, after actually taking the company public and naming it Caterpillar in 1925, today Caterpillar has more than 3 million pieces of equipment out in the field. A pretty old, stodgy business, right? Manufacturing, putting large iron out there. But in 2014, Caterpillar took the very technology this room invented. The concepts of IoT and using the cloud and integrating that back into a very old manufactured piece of technology now has them in a position where they have more than 400,000 large pieces of equipment out in the world that today track every piece of data that piece of equipment does. And so no longer do they sell these large pieces of equipment on a capital expenditure, but they too start selling by the tonnage moved. And they're tracking over 300,000 different pieces of information that come from these pieces of equipment as far as what they're accomplishing, what their maintenance needs are, when they need to be serviced next, how they're performing, and they're using all of that information on a regular basis. They have cameras, they have GPS systems, and they have really mastered in these early days of the outcome economy how to put IoT in place, or the Internet of Things. The third example is John Deere. Started in 1837 in Grand Detour, Illinois. John made the first polished plow. In 1912, John listed the company as a public company and had 12 manufacturing facilities around the country. Now, nearly 180 years later, after the production of that polished plow, John Deere is now the world leader in precision agriculture. John Deere is now moving to a model just started this year where no longer they are selling the equipment. They are no longer selling million-dollar machines. What they are selling is crop yield. What they are selling is fuel efficiency. What they are selling is fertilizer efficiency. Because see, these machines today measure everything that's done. These machines tell the farmers how many seeds to plant, when to plant, where to plant, how much moisture and how much fertilizer they should do to maximize their yield. And once again, John Deere figured out it wasn't the product they wanted to buy, it wasn't the service, it was the outcome of yield management. So interesting to see 3 very old economy companies that have taken the creativity and the technology that this room has invented and embedded it in their business so that they could move towards an outcome economy, and all 3 being very successful today. Isn't it surprising that we're not leading the outcome economy? Us as a room, as a collective group of people? Do we find ourselves still trying to push steel or push metal or push digits or bytes of information or ones or zeros? Or are we really starting to reevaluate what we're selling to our customers as the outcomes that they're seeking? So I thought I'd close today and get us started and hand it off to the great speakers that we have by reminding us of 3 really common game plans or racing plans that we can utilize as we drive forward and drive faster in this outcome economy. First, we have to understand the customer's job to be done. Second, we have to clean and make the data that we get from our systems more actionable so that we can actually drive our decision making in the outcome economy. And third, frankly, the hardest of all, is we have to orient and organize ourselves around that outcome. So let's touch on each of those very quickly. If you don't know where you're going, the old adage says, you'll probably never arrive. And that's true in our business as well. And so it's important as we think about working with our clients, what is the job that they're trying to complete? And this is back to understanding the outcome they are seeking. I think the days, and I've grown up in sales my entire career, in the days of when I used to go out and peddle technology in a sense and talk about features and functions, people bought on that basis 20 years ago. But they don't buy on that today. They buy on the success they'll achieve that you'll help them achieve on their behalf. And so there's 3 things we need to think about: proactive engagement with our customers in those conversations, prescriptive conversations, and personalized interaction of how we start talking with them. And that begins not only in the sales cycle, but once the sale is made, it happens in onboarding. It happens on implementation. It happens on adoption. It happens in the cross-sell and upsell conversations and the renewals and extensions. Those are the conversations that are really critical that we need to be receptive to, and very importantly, have to organize ourselves around. Number 2, the world is awash in data. We all are. If we all had perfect data, probably many of us wouldn't even need to be here today. In fact, many of us point to it as the single factor that holds us back from achieving what we want. We think about, hey, we want to really get in the cross-sell and upsell, and yet we have long conversations about what is considered a cross-sell and upsell. Can we even track it? Do we even know what it looks like? Interesting, at McLaren Mission Control for F1 Formula racing drivers, they're collecting literally hundreds of thousands of pieces of data every minute a race car is on the track. They're using supercomputers while the race car driver is on the track to bring them information back around the temperature of the tires, around how the engine is running, around how the brakes are working, and real-time communicating with that driver to make real-time adjustments in the car. Because as we know, the difference between first and second can be literally 1 second. And I think about in our business, we have customer data, we have billing data, we have support ticket data, we have usage data. We have all of these, and that's the tip of the iceberg, and yet very few of us are using any of it. In fact, in the old renewals part of our business, and I call it old because so much more of the customer journey today and customer success happens in the other phases, but in the old part, what did we look at? We looked at renewal date, That was a big driver of the actions, the changes we made to the relationship. Renewal date, well, the renewal date's coming up. Probably a good time to start talking to our end customers. We looked at the size of the engagement. Probably should call our $1 million customers before our $5,000 customers. In today's world, those two pieces of data may be the least important pieces of data. Maybe on that 90th day of the relationship you have with a client, looking at their usage data and understanding if that's going up or going down to make the predictive decision whether you should reach out to your client either A, at all, because we can't afford to call every one of our clients, B, because their usage is going way up and they're a great opportunity to cross-sell and upsell to, or C, because their usage is going down and they're a major candidate for churn. These are what we need to do, just like F1 racing does with their drivers to win the race. So we need to get the data, analyze the data, and act on the data, because ignoring it is a huge mistake. Third and finally, in the outcome economy, in which we'll be speaking about today, is this concept of orienting around the outcome. As I mentioned yesterday, I spent 3 hours in New York last week with 30 other CEOs from many of your companies in this room and others. And interestingly, one of the biggest discussions, and I've heard it from J.B. Wood, who you'll be hearing from next. I've heard it from Nick Mehta, CEO of Gainsight, who you'll be hearing from this afternoon, is how do we actually organize our companies? You know, many of us were based and built around field sales organizations that were large and, quite honestly, a little bit expensive at times. But the world is changing as more and more of our sales opportunities are actually happening online in the very conversations we're having. Or maybe those insights are coming out of the customer service or customer support group. Or maybe it's how our marketing organizations are even talking to our end clients. And lo and behold, where's Bob Pinkerton? It's the finance guy over here saying that we can't even price the deal that way. So those are all old school ideas where today, what a lot of the CEOs were talking about last week is how do we reorganize ourselves to align to an economy and a group of end buying customers who want to buy differently and buy something differently from us. So we have to align internally and allocate the resources for customer success. And very importantly, we have to be willing to accept some shared risk and reward, just like Rolls-Royce. When those planes aren't flying, they're not getting paid. Just like John Deere, when the crop yield goes down, their revenues are lower. And just like ServiceSource, that for 17 years introduced in our own industry the pay-for-performance model, that if we're not selling, if we're not retaining and growing revenue on your behalf, we're not getting paid. So I think that's a critical principle to make sure that we're aligning around the success of our end customers together. So in closing, I just want you to take away that we are in this new outcome economy, and it behooves us all to make sure that we get aligned around it. And I want you to remember that at ServiceSource, whether you're looking at finding new sources of revenue or improving the cost effectiveness of your revenue acquisition and retention, or maintaining channel effectiveness as that channel is getting totally disrupted. I was with one of you yesterday that will go unnamed, but told me that 30% of their resellers and channel partners will be gone in 12 to 15 months because the channel is being totally disrupted with the disruptive technology of cloud. In an era where we use channel partners or resellers to provision what we manufactured, to a world where you can provision and do that online for yourself, this company felt like 30% of their channel partners would be gone in the next 12 to 15 months. Or whether you're building expertise around revenue lifecycle management, which we feel is the monetization of the customer lifecycle, or if you're trying to uncover new insights around your business, or finally, if you're just trying to accelerate the transformation from a perpetual model to a cloud and subscription-based economy, we hope you'll think of ServiceSource as a great partner for you in 2017. Thank you, and start your engines.